Starting now, you can get a transcript of each week's Rich Dad radio show. Just visit www.richdad.com/radio and download a copy today.
This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. It's Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today, it's a very, very, very important show, especially for those of you who really want a richer life. And I mean a richer life beyond just money. So this is my favorite TV commercial. But since it's television and this is radio, I kind of set the scene for you. So the scene is this. It's a Chinese restaurant. And there's human beings sitting around this big Chinese table. And in the middle of the table is this big, huge, fat alligator. And so naturally I go, what is this all about? So, okay, it's a human beings, about 5 of them, and this big, fat alligator. Now, all of us can relate to this big, fat alligator. Either we're the alligator or we know somebody who is. But we all know people who are that alligator. You know, they don't pick up the check. And when the check comes, they get real quiet, they get real nervous and things like this. So today we're going to be talking about a great book. It's called Giftology. And it's about really more than gifts. It's about being generous. And after I read Giftology, you know, I'm getting one for all of my friends. Not that they're not generous, because, you know, my wife Kim will verify this. She says, you and your friends are extremely generous to each other. You know, we're generous people. But as we know, there's a lot of really rich people who are as cheap. There's also a lot of poor people, friends and family included. Cheap. We go to the dinner table, you know, and it's the same people. They're like alligators, they eat the crispy duck and all that. But when the check comes, they grow alligator arms. They can't reach the check, and they've never reached for the check. In all my life, they've never reached for the check. And I know they're not rich, but they have cash. You know, they store cash like pack rats. But man, when it comes to check time, when it comes to giving, they're cheap. And just the other day, you know, my wife and I are doing repairs on our seawall in Waikiki, right on Diamond Head. It's a very expensive property. But the repairs exceed $1 million. But the reason we spent the money was because the hole in our seawall was damaging the reef and the beach and the fish. It was destroying the environment. And so we got the bill, you know, it was $1 million. And so my neighbor coughed up, I coughed up. But the third neighbor, who has more money than all of us combined, suddenly, you know, he's very pro-environment. But when the check came, he says, oh, let the government pay for it. Let the government pay for it. Meanwhile, his wall is hemorrhaging dirt into the ocean, killing the ocean. So I also realize there's a lot of environmentalists out there who are environmentalists until it comes time to reach for the check. And so that's what's happening in our world today. We have a lot of people with alligator arms. So our guest today is John Ruhlin. He's a speaker and author and founder of the Ruhlin Group. His book is called Giftology, The Art and Science of Using Gifts to Cut Through the Noise, Increase Referrals, and Strengthen Client Retention. And I want to say this much. When I read this book, it stepped up my game. Again, my wife Kim says, my friends and I are very generous people. But we can also get more generous. And so that's why it's very important. And since Kim is not here today because she's dealing with a bunch of cheap people in Denver, we have Melissa Mahler, who is one of our producers on this program. She just loves this book. Right, Melissa?
Love the book, John. It's very, very meaningful and very, very timely, I think.
And tell us for the reason it hit you. What was the thing that jumped out at you? Because after reading your book, John, it destroyed my vision of tchotchke, you know?
Tchotchke.
Yeah.
Right, tchotchke. I think everybody that spent any time in corporate America,
Which you have.
which I have. Yes, I'm a recovering advertising sales executive, and you wind up, and one day you find out that you could literally like fill an entire store with tchotchkes with logoed merchandise.
And how many of you out there have coffee cups with Joe's, business on it and all this? I go to a lot of conferences, and every conference gives me a bag with their logo on it, with their notebooks with their logo on it and all this. And John Ruhlin, your book ruined me because I now see that as horrible stuff. It's not a gift. It's advertising. It's cheap. It's tacky. And what your book has done is stepped up the need to be generous and actually be better at gift giving. So welcome to the program, John, and your book Giftology is a fantastic book.
Thanks for having me. This is an honor. I've been trying to hold back the laughter as you guys have been talking about the tchotchkes and the people with alligator arms. It's there's a lot of people out there that claim to be a giver, but when it comes time to actually be a thoughtful gift giver or be generous or be an environmentalist, it's all of a sudden they disappear.
Oh, so, man, I tell you what, like everybody is an environmentalist in Hawaii, but they all want the government to pay for it. And I say to them, there's only one problem with that. Our government's broke. Oh, it's the government's responsibility. And I said, well, who do you think pays the taxes for the government? Well, it's still the government's responsibility. And John, these guys have more money because they come from old money, but they watch the ocean dying and they won't reach for the check. It's just sad.
Yeah, well, it's not just Hawaii. Going to corporate America, everybody talks a good game. That everybody says relationships are their most valuable asset. And then their budget to show gratitude is $17.37. It's whatever's left over in the budget. Yeah. It's, hey, here's a gift card to Starbucks. Here's a bottle of wine from Amazon. Here's really, it's $1 million relationship, and you're gonna insult them and say that's the value of the relationship is $17.37 or a polo with a logo on it. It's just. But nobody ever gets called out for it. Nobody ever writes a note and says, I literally thought less of you as a human because of the gift you sent me or the gift you tried to send me.
Or their T-shirt with their logo on it. I get a ton of those.
I know. Yeah, and it's not like it's subtle and tone on tone. It's like a softball-sized logo on a lot of them. It's like, who has ever... you're lucky to wash your car with it or, use it for the dog bin. A lot of those things end up at Goodwill. But nobody ever tells their client, their VP of sales, the director of marketing that, a lot of this stuff, you want to be green, stop giving out crap that ends up in the landfill. That's one of the best ways to be green is not to give crap from China that is just, cheap.
With your logo on it.
With your logo on it. That's not a gift. A gift by its very, you'd never go to somebody's wedding and on a nice Tiffany's vase engrave compliments of Rich Dad, or compliments of Ruling Group. That'd be the cheesiest thing on the planet. But we do that in our business lives, and we call it marketing, but really it's not.
Yeah, so tell me, how did you come up with Giftology and the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, increase referrals, and strengthen client retention? First of all, it's a brilliantly well-written book, and I love it. So congratulations.
Yeah.
But how'd you come into that?
On accident, out of desperation. I was going to go to med school. I had gotten hurt in my job my freshman year of pre-med, and I interned with a company called Cutco, the knife company. They worked with 1.5 million college kids. I didn't really have any sales experience, but I thought if my buddy Steve, who's a seminary student and is not a salesperson at all, if he can do it, I can try. And I pitched my girlfriend's dad, who is an attorney, but he was the most generous person I'd ever met. And to this day, he's probably top 10 most generous people I've ever met out of millions of people. And he was always giving things away. And because of it, he was a rainmaker. All the referrals in town came his way. Every deal, every real estate, he owned banks and oil wells. And so I pitched him the idea of giving away Cutco pocket knives to all his clients that were men. They're CEOs of lumber companies, insurance companies, financial advisor firms. And he changed my life forever. He said, John, what about the paring knives? Could I engrave those? And I'm like, Paul, why would you give a bunch of grown men a kitchen tool? That's weird. I'm desperate. I'll sell you as many paring knives as you want, but why? And he said, John, in 40 years in business, the reason I have more deal flow than I can possibly ever handle in 10 lifetimes is I found out if you take care of and show gratitude and appreciation to the entire family and business, everything else in business seems to take care of itself.
Yeah, I mean, your book is so well written, right, Melissa?
Yes, absolutely. It's meaningful beginning to end, and it's very relatable. And John, you talk about in there, how do you give the right gift? Like, what qualifies as the right gift?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of times people focus on just the gift itself, and they don't realize that there's a lot of other things other than just the item itself. Like, you can give a Rolex, and I've seen people do that where they put, Domino's put their logo on the face of a Rolex and gave it out, and people traded them in. So it's not always about the gift, it's about the timing. Like, we're a gifting company, and we say no gifts between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and people think we're like the Grinch or that like we're like, we want to kill Christmas. But no, like, giving a gift because you want to, not out of obligation, not after a referral, not because you have to do it, because you want to do it. So timing matters just as much as what the gift is. The personalization of making sure that something has somebody's name on it and their family name on it and is tied to them as a human being.
And not your corporate logo, it's the customer's name on it, right? The client's name.
Exactly.
And so that's what our friend Hal Elrod, a guy who wrote Miracle Morning, he sent me your book, but I also have a whole stack of Cutco knives with my name on it or Rich Dad on it. And I'm going, it could have been Miracle Morning on it. Do you know what I mean? But it's Rich Dad or Robert Kiyosaki on it. And now I understand where you got the idea from. It's from you and Giftology, right?
Yeah, I mean, guys like Hal, we have clients that are doing $1 million in revenue and clients that are doing $20 billion in revenue. They'll outsource all of their gifting to Giftology because, guys like Hal want to be really thoughtful, and they are. But when you have as many great relationships as you guys do, like, it's hard to scale that in a business, and so that's why they outsource it to us. But Hal is somebody that is constantly, like, he'll text me almost weekly, hey, here's 5 people that I just want to love on. Like, they didn't do anything for me. I was just thinking about them. Can you send, a $500 knife set or a $5,000 knife set, or, hey, we want to do a custom leather piece to this person's wife. And so Hal is somebody that is, even when he couldn't afford to, he was being radically generous. And because of that, he's reaping the fruits of, what is he now in like 32 or 33 countries with Miracle Morning? It's because he poured into people for decades. And because of that, he's reaping what he sowed.
So the thing is right now, and I can feel people's minds going, their alligator arms are shrinking, What do you mean, Givix? So let me just tell a quick story. It's because after I read Giftology, there's one of my favorite people was coming to town. That's Jim Rickards. And he and I talk about the raven. And the raven is the god in mythology of prophecy. So I went out and I bought him a $150 raven, some little concrete thing for his yard. Then I read Giftology and I went, holy crap. Oh, my alligator arms were so short, they were up on my chest. So I said, oh my God, this is going to cost me money. So my assistant Christina and I were on the web, and I'm looking at all these ravens, and the one that spoke to me was $15,000. It was the most beautiful artist-created raven. I went, holy mackerel. So my alligator arms had to kind of come out. And I want to tell you, it's one of the most perfect things I have ever done, because when Jim Rickards showed up, he wrote The Road to Ruin and Currency Wars. Yep. He showed up, and he pulls the curtain or the cloth off the raven. He goes, holy mackerel. And the impact, John, was beyond priceless. And that's what your book has done. So when we come back, we'll be talking more about all of you out there with alligator arms and handing out your charts with your logo on it. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and Rich Dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
Log on to richdadradio.com while you listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And, of course, we're talking about alligator arms, and everybody needs to lengthen their little alligator arms. And we all know people like that. You know, we have all friends and family members. They love to come to dinner, but they never reach for the check. And I was talking about how everybody's an environmentalist until they have to pick up the check. They want the government to fix the problem. So anyway, we're talking about a very special book today. It's called Giftology. Our guest is John Ruhlin. And it's Giftology is the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, increase referrals, and strengthen client retention. But you will not understand this book because your alligator arms will definitely shrink when you read this book. That's the problem. So once again, you can listen to the Rich Dad Radio Show anytime, anywhere on iTunes or Android. And you can listen to this podcast anytime because we archive all of our programs at richdadradio.com. The reason we archive our programs is because repetition is the way you learn. So all of you out there with alligator arms, you may want to listen to this program again. You might pick up something new. Then get John's book, Giftology. But most important, if you download it and you can have your friends, family, and people you work with listen to it. Because trust me, you have more than two partners. They have alligator arms too. Because this is a budgeting process. So anyway, we have Melissa joining us and all this. By the way, John's website is ruhlingroup.com. So Melissa, and Kim's not here because she's dealing with alligators out there. Melissa, what did you think of John's book, Giftology?
Well, it's a tremendous book, and it really gives meaning to what we do in relationship, right? In relationship to everyone, especially in business, though. But, Robert, you mentioned have a budget. And, John, I'd like for you to talk about what you talk about having a system in place, right? Because I think the obvious thing is everybody always thinks, oh, we're going to give gifts at Christmas, right? We're going to give gifts on a client's birthday. So can you share a little bit?
How about the box of, David and John, pears or peaches and stuff like that?
Right.
You know, Or you know what I really like is fruitcake. I mean, I don't eat the stuff, but I get these tons of fruitcake.
Fruitcakes.
You know, I'm going, I hate this
It's
stuff.
horrible.
But what you're saying is being the alligator actually can detract from you, even though you're generous, right?
Yeah. You have to. Well, there's a lot of alligators out there, and they think they're being generous. They don't realize that they're actually spending money to have a negative impact. And so our big thing is that there should be metrics in place, just like you have in marketing or operations. And you should if you do things right, you put $1 into Giftology system, you get $3 to $10 back. And the reason is that people don't have a system, they don't have a budget in place, and they're not doing things well. And so if you do things well and reinvest between 5 and 15% of your net, I don't care what your top line revenue is, that's all ego. What's your real net profit on a relationship? And the reason that you reinvest money back into all your key relationships is not just to keep them, whether they're an employee or a client or a supplier, not just to grow them incrementally, but the way that we've landed pro sports teams and some of the biggest companies in the world as clients is that our clients become salespeople for us. I have guys like Hal out there that are clients, but I have thousands of those guys out there that are going out of their way to introduce me and to pitch me to their friends and clients and influencers and whatever else because I've loved on them. I reinvest 15% of our net profits back into our relationships. Like last year alone, we gave out $350,000 in gifts to our most important people. That was budgeted. We knew that number was coming, and it was based on real numbers, not a gut feeling on December 15th, which is what most people do. They say, oh, we made money this year. We probably should say thank you. And then they send out the Harry and David pears or the bottles of wine or the crystal or the koozies or the T-shirts, all the crap.
Or the coffee cup with their logo on it. I tell you, you destroyed me. Your book destroyed me because right after I read your book, I went to this conference again, and all they gave out was Chach. You know, that's their logo on their products. I could walk around like an idiot with their logo on it. I hated it. You made me hate it.
I know. Once you see it, you can't unsee it, and I think that's the challenge. Is everybody just follows like sheep. Like we all play in the red ocean, and we do what everybody else does. We take people out to dinners and ball games, and in golf, and we don't realize that we're actually communicating that relationships don't matter when we give something to somebody, we put our logo on it. It's cheap. It's not thoughtful. It's done out of obligation. Like, nobody wants to get something, whether it's your wife or whether it's your client, out of obligation. They want to get something to feel VIP and to feel like you actually understand them as a human being.
Right. So let's stretch some alligator arms right now. Okay. Like, yeah. I really love the story where you talked about this company that was into customer service. And they didn't, they were having a hard time communicating customer service to their own employees. So would you mind telling us what your suggestion to this company was, as how do you communicate customer service to your own employees?
Yeah, well, what's interesting is I had to give the pep talk to myself, because this was our company. And I'm like, why are my employees not getting and understanding how to give, like, Ritz-Carlton service? Why are they not understanding how to communicate with CEOs and executives and pro sports teams and whatever else? And I'm like, and all at once it hit me. I was like, I can't expect them to treat people like the Ritz-Carlton if they've never been to the Ritz-Carlton. And so we started to send our employees to the Ritz-Carlton, and we started to send them gifts as if they were our best clients.
And for those of you who haven't stayed at the Ritz-Carlton, it's a memorable experience. I mean, every place I go, if the people that bring me in to speak put me at the Ritz-Carlton, I love them even more.
Of course you do, because they're all about surprise and delight. Like, they invented that term, and they live it. Like, all of their employees, even the janitor, can make a decision for a few $100s to fix a client's experience. Like, they're empowered, and our employees are the same way. If something goes wrong, they can triple down on the gift, and if there's a $1,000 gift, they can send out a $3,000 gift without asking me.
So for those of you who are listening, this is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You listen to our program anytime on iTunes and Android, and all our programs are archived. We archive them so you can listen to this again, or have your business partners listen to this, which is what I'm going to do with my own business partners, because what happens when you mention Ritz-Carlton, alligator arms get shorter. Mine is a $10 gift certificate to Starbucks. And that's why, everybody, I think, right now can relate to the alligator in some way. And as long as you're the alligator, giftology doesn't make sense to you. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, it does. People don't realize that they're actually damaging the ROI in their business and their growth and their referrals. All the things we want to have happen in our life come as a result of our relationships and investing in them. And most people don't understand that what they're communicating to their most important relationships is that they don't matter, that they're cheap, that they don't believe that there's an abundance, that there is going to to be growth.
I want you to wear my T-shirt, though. Please wear my T-shirt and drink from my coffee cup.
I'm sorry, Robert. Not even for you, man. If I'm going to wear a shirt, it's going to say Giftology, and even that, I don't even have Giftology shirts because I still think it's so cheesy for me to even wear a shirt with Giftology on it. Like, if I'm going to wear a shirt, it's going to say Lululemon or Under Armour on it. It's not going to say Giftology or Rich Dad.
So tell us a story about the Chicago. No, come on, you got to wear Rich Dad. Okay, all right. So talk about the Chicago Cubs and what they did.
Yeah, so they reached out. I actually pursued them for 7 years. I sent them gifts for 7 years, and they finally reached back out to John. Here's your shot. We're redoing Wrigley Field. We're ripping the locker room wood out. The maintenance guys want to throw it away. We don't know what to do with it. We don't want to make a plaque out of it and have something like everybody does that collects dust. What do you think? And I said, you know what you should do with it? You have all these suite owners, sponsors, people that spend millions of dollars or tens of millions that can buy anything that they want. You need to create artifacts. Like, who cares about gifts? Create artifacts that people will never forget, but that have a purpose. And I said, we should make Bluetooth speakers out of the wood. We'll remold the wood. We'll reglue the wood. And I went to a bunch of speaker companies that laughed at me and said, you're insane. So we brought it to our own factory, and we remade 400 Bluetooth speakers from Wrigley Field locker room wood, numbered 1 through 400. And even the Ricketts family, who are billionaires, freaked out. It's been written about in multiple books. And now all of their projects that are high-end, that are really unique, like we made leather bags that had accent pieces from the on-deck circle from Wrigley Field. We've done amazing projects with them since then, but the speakers really put us on the map in the pro sports world of of trading one-of-a-kind artifacts for people.
And then, again, all of the alligator arms, I want you to start stretching them, okay? And the other one is the story that Melissa loves best. It's about Brooks Brothers. And for those, because Rich Dad Radio reaches worldwide, Brooks Brothers is a very conservative men's store. So what did you do for this client who liked Brooks Brothers?
Yeah. They weren't even a client yet. They were a prospect. I heard a speaker, a guy named Cameron Harold, who actually lives in Scottsdale half the year and Vancouver, Canada half the year. But I found out he was coming to speak to my EO chapter. I've been a part of EO for a long time, and I wanted to get his attention because I knew I probably couldn't afford his consulting services because he coaches like the Sheikh of Qatar and he coaches all over the world like CEOs. But I wanted him to be a mentor and an advisor. And I told him, hey, let's go to the Cavs game. LeBron's in town. Let's go to a steak dinner. And like a lot of us, like we go to hundreds of dinners and hundreds of, ball games. Like that wasn't going to wow him. And so I was looking for a way to wow him and found out that he loves Brooks Brothers. He was going to go shopping there and his flight got delayed. So coming into Cleveland, he wasn't going to have time to go shopping. So I found out what his shirt size was from his assistant. I went up to Brooks Brothers and I bought everything in the new fall collection, all the jackets, pants, belts, shoes, everything, all the colors. It was $7,000 in clothes. And we went to the Ritz and outfitted the hotel room to look like the Brooks Brothers store. So all I had to do was pick out what he wanted, and he could, and he could move on. And when he got in, like you could tell, like he didn't want to go to the dinner and the ball game. But when he went up to his room and came back down, he said, John, I've had thousands of people do amazing things for me. I've already texted pictures to customer service experts like John DeJulius to change my quote for the book. What you did for me was the most personalized, thoughtful gift I've ever received. Whatever you want to talk about for the next 3 hours, I'm all ears. And over the last 10 years, he's referred me more than, he's done things for me that $10 million in advertising could never do. Like he's opened up doors with the president of Starbucks. The reason we can charge $25,000 for a keynote is because he endorsed me first and presented me to event planners. He went into my corner in the most huge way possible because of that act of kindness.
So, Melissa, what do you think?
Yeah, I just think that is such a powerful story and such a powerful experience, and certainly it built that relationship that you now give credit to in your career. But you also talk about the fact that it doesn't have to be. I mean, that's like a great example of extreme gift giving. But I think for our audience too, I think it's important. You also talk about it doesn't have to be all about the money, right, John? It doesn't have to be all about the price of the gift. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, actually, some of the best gifts that we've given or received, because there's some companies that can't receive gifts, and that's usually the excuse for alligator arms is, I would give gifts, but our clients can't receive them, so they use that excuse even though 1 out of 10 can't receive it. But in general, the note that accompanies the gift, the handwritten note, is just as powerful as oftentimes the item itself. And I've seen where, like we took this to an extreme where our letterhead now is a sheet of steel. It costs $9. So when I send a thank you note to somebody, it's on a piece of metal. And people freak out not only about the price tag of the $9, like $9 you can't even buy a flashlight for, but it's what's written on the metal that makes it that so impactful. So a lot of times our best gifts have been like not the gift itself, it's the thought behind the gift that goes into the note. And so I've seen where people have taken something cheesy like a mug, and based upon how they personalized it and the note that came with it and the video that they made with it, the mug might be a few $100s or whatever else, but it was the note in the video that really was the secret sauce. Mm-hmm. And so people will give a lame excuse and say it's the thought that counts, but really it's the thoughtful thought that counts. And so when you take the time I've seen people where, somebody sent me something cool the other day and it was like personalized stamps to the book because they knew the book had hit bestseller status and whatever else. And so, but they were thinking of me. They wrote this really thoughtful note. And, what do stamps cost? Nothing. But it was the note behind it and that they were thinking of me and that they personalized this as something that was really important to me that really stood out. And so I think that a lot of times people say, well, I don't have, $1 million to spend on gifts. I'm like, great. I was in college. I would just spend $200 on one gift to one really important person. And guess what? It made all the difference. So if your budget's $200 for the entire year, or if it's, $2,000 or $20 million, like at the end of the day, just start wherever you're at reinvesting in your relationships and take the time to do, it's not math, it's not quantity, it's quality, way, way, way over, trying to hit 10,000 people. Like I tell people, narrow your list down to your top 10 or 20% of your relationships and then spend all of your budget or whatever that is on those most important few, and they will grow your business, exponentially. That's where we see 10 and 20 and 30x growth
John,
is from narrowing that list down.
John, thank you very much. We're out of time. Love to have you. Your message is fantastic. You're the author of Giftology, the art and science of using gifts to cut through the noise, increase referrals, and strengthen client retention. And I want to tell you something for all of you. Please get his book. It'll lengthen your alligator arms considerably. It causes you to think and really start to treasure and value the most important people in your life. Sometimes the people we take the most we take for granted is the word. So, John, your website is rulingroup.com. Any final words for the audience about your company and what to do?
Go and check out the book. And even if you don't want to check out the book, you can go download the 10 worst gifts to give. If you go to the Giver's Edge, a lot of times people are like, well, what should I avoid giving? And they don't realize that gift cards or food or alcohol is a bad gift. All of those are on the list, and they can get the free PDF if they want to start out with alligator arms and not invest $20 in a book. They can get that for free and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, well, I thank you for your book. It's extremely well written, simple, but to the point. So thank you very much, John.
Thanks for having me, guys.
And once again, I want to thank John, and we'll be right back with Ask Robert.
You're listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show with Robert Kiyosaki.
Don't be like Charlie. Charlie is that do-it-yourselfer who does himself in. Do-it-yourself is good for tile and grout. It is not good for asset protection. Charlie thought he'd save a few dollars forming his LLC online. With no guidance, he did it wrong. When he sold the property, he lost thousands and thousands of dollars. He did himself in by trying to do it himself. Don't burn yourself. Use Corporate Direct to set up and maintain your LLCs and corporations. Corporate Direct is owned and operated by attorney and rich dad advisor Garrett Sutton. Garrett wrote the bestsellers Loopholes of Real Estate and Start Your Own Corporation. He is Robert Kiyosaki's attorney for asset protection. He and his team will do it right. Visit them at corporatedirect.com or call 800-600-1760. Mention Rich Dad and receive $100 off your formation fee. That's corporatedirect.com. corporatedirect.com.
It pays to listen. Now back to Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad Radio Show.
I want to thank John Rulin, author of Giftology. I highly recommend for those of you, especially if you have alligator arms or you need to increase the length of your arms, get the book. It's so well written. And that's why I'm giving it to all my friends, because it's important we be genuinely more generous. And we can all be more generous. That's the whole point of this. So let's go into the questions. And Melissa, what's the first question to ask Robert?
Our first question comes from Emil in Miami, Florida. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Says, Robert, is there a certain percentage that you and Kim donate to charity each year? How do you establish that? I know you both talk about the importance of being generous.
Yeah, we cover that at the start of our most of our books here. We talk about the 10%, 10%, 10%. It goes 10% to tithing, to charity, 10% to savings, and 10% to investing. And the 10%, and like when we had nothing, 10% was a lot. When we have a lot, 10% is even more. That's why the alligator arms metaphor is very important, because if we start tightening up on our alligator arms, then we're out of sync with our own generosity. It's really simple. I'm not really religious, but give and you shall receive. So if you want a punch in the mouth, give a punch. You want to have more money, give money. And I meet people with alligator arms. They always say, I just give my time. What you have is a lot of time. So it's very, very simple. You want to have money, give money. You want time, give time. You want a punch in the mouth, throw a punch. It's very, very simple. I think it's one of Newton's laws there. And the thing that happened for me was that when I was a little boy with Elvis Presley, it made Time magazine or Life magazine. It had a picture of Elvis taking off a ring, this huge diamond ring, and giving it to a passenger. And my mother went berserko because it was like let's say it's a 4-carat diamond. And the woman admired Elvis's ring, and he took it off and he gave it to her. It made the news. And my mother says, well, yeah, boy, did her alligator arms come out? Hold him. What's he doing, And I always thought it was a good idea. The trouble is we all have alligator arms. It's just a natural tendency. But that's why, deeds, not words. You either do it or you're not going to do it. So my wife and I give, we tithe, we save, and we invest. And I was talking to a friend yesterday. This poor guy has so many excuses. Oh, I can't do that. Well, you have money. I can't do that. No. I would do it, but all he says is I can't. And then he's a good Christian, so he says, well, Jesus is going to save me. I said, well, I think Jesus says, give and you shall receive. And they don't know is their alligator arms attached to their brain. That's the reason they're poor. I'll give money when I'm rich. I said, the reason you're not rich is because you're not giving today. Oh, that's all bull, You have no idea what your cheapness does to your life. And that's why, please, if you're still cheap, buy the book Giftology and, maybe kind of realign some of your brain pattern in your brain and in your heart and in your emotions. Because it's all in the Bible. My good Christian friend who is cheap. I can't afford it. I have kids. That's why I can't afford it. I have health problems. That's why I can't afford it. It was a half an hour conversation. I said, thank you. Bye. I've been my friend for 60 years. But he gets cheaper and more unhappy because he's cheap. Although a good Christian. He's good being a good Christian. But I don't think that's what Jesus said. Grow alligator arms. Next question, Melissa.
Our next question comes from Dawn in Port Arthur, Texas. Favorite book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Says, what do you think about the trend of companies utilizing a charitable or a give back to garner sales?
There's a saying in business, it's called a ploy perceived is no longer a ploy. So if they're just doing it to do it, because it's the trend today. I know these people, for every shoe you buy, I give you a shoe, and all this other stuff. We help the kids and starving us and all that stuff. If it's just a ploy, it's not inside your heart, people know. That's why if you're one of these, and there's a lot of those guys out there, they're called fake generosity. It's no different than wearing a T-shirt with somebody's logo on it. They're doing it for advertising purpose. It's not for real. And so we all know fakes out there. And if you're going to be faking it, I wouldn't do it personally. I would really think about it. And, it's like I'm very happy to say my wife, Kim, always says to me, you and your friends are very, very generous. But we don't just talk about it. Just the other day for my birthday, my best friend Larry flew to town. I was born on April 8th. He's born April 9th. And I said, Larry, let me take you to dinner. I said, no. So he comes, he picks us up, and we have a lot of money. And the next thing you know, we drive to this fabulous hotel. There's a helicopter waiting. Larry puts us, Kim and I, in the helicopter. He flies us to another resort outside of Phoenix. He has this mountaintop table set up where we have champagne and wine away from everybody, and then we helicopter back to town. And that's what Kim says, you and your friends are extremely generous people. And if I could pass that lesson on, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Like I had this truck, it's a beautiful Ford Macho Raptor. Every macho guy wants a Raptor. And I have one. But trouble is I don't drive it. So I was sitting there looking at it and going, this is really a waste of a truck. It's a beautiful truck. It's got 9,000 miles on it. And just as I had that thought, a friend of mine who has been very generous to me, his name is Jay. He's a great guy. And I keep hearing, he doesn't tell us. I just hear, Jay did this for you, Jay did that for you, Jay did this for you, Jay did that for you. And so I'm sitting there looking at my truck, and then 2 days later, Jay calls up and says, may I buy your truck? Oh, sure. And so it says it's worth $60,000. I said, and it's worth more because it's only got 9,000 miles on it. So I said, okay, so what do you offer, Jay? I says, I offer you 60. I said, you can have it for 30. And so the bidding went the opposite. He was trying to get me to come up to sell him the truck, and I was trying to get him to come down so he felt happy paying less for the truck. And so, that's the way it works in my world. You don't want money. He's always done it for years for free. And the last one was Marcos. He's the best guy. He goes out and he goes, our house looks like, our yard looks like the Garden of Eden. And one day he was talking about his daughters, he has 2 twin daughters. And he says, they're getting ready for a bicycle. I said, there it is. So I got these 2 beautiful big fat wheel bicycles they're pink and yellow or something. And when Marcos came over with his daughters, I said, these are for you. You know, they cost $400, $200 each. But that's the kind of generosity I'm asking you to think about when you read Giftology. Your friendships and the people that work with you, for you, and are on your side, they're priceless. And that's why all you guys out there with alligator arms, and I know I have them too. But I always remember Elvis Presley and my mom. The reason she was poor, she thought that was really stupid to give a huge ring away to a total stranger. That's the difference. So once again, thank you for your questions to Ask Robert. You can submit your questions to Ask Robert at Rich Dad Radio. And once again, thanks to John Ruhlin. His book is Giftology. And thank you all for listening.